We're going to talk about altcoins, we're going to talk about the crypto cycles, and also look at it from a different way called the Bitcoin spiral. We're going to talk about Trump, the Trump coin, and then back again into Bitcoin quickly. So let's get started. Now, if we talk about altcoins, let's start by talking about these major altcoins. These have all raised 9 figures, and we can see if you look at the last 24-hour revenue, they are basically zero. And that is the case for most altcoins which have raised significant amounts of money back a few months ago or a year ago when they've been hyping tremendously, and of course during the last bull market. And this is the case for most altcoins, like I said, and therefore, in my opinion, it is only Bitcoin that we should really focus on. And I also can, from personal experience, say that I have held on and I'm still holding on to some altcoins which I should have sold way long ago. And my personal advice is just invest in Bitcoin. And really, I want you to listen to what I say here and take it with a warm heart, because these altcoins, they might sound epic, they might sound really good, especially things like Trump coin, which at the moment they sound like a good investment. But if you really think about what would be there in 10 years time, I don't think a coin that, and I'm sure a coin that is based on hype and based on a person, will not exist. And you also need to think about, is this coin really useful? Do people actually use it? I mean, there's so many random coins. Like, even if I talk about Pepe coin, and it has done tremendously well, it is after all just a meme coin, and there's no guarantee that it will be there 10 years from today. And that is what I really want to highlight here, that if you put your money somewhere, put it into Bitcoin. Even if you look at Ethereum, for example, Ethereum, I would do cycle by cycle. I mean, I think it can do good next cycle. Of course, it's the biggest altcoin, but I would still reevaluate it after that every single time. But Bitcoin, I'm confident and I would put my money in there confidently. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is what we can be confident about, and that is the 4-year cycles. Now, for the 4-year cycles, let's have a look at this more in a bigger screen. We see that we always see the top for Bitcoin in Q4 post-halving year. So it has always been Q4 post-halving year that we see a top. From the bottom of the bear market to the top of the bull market, it has always been 1,064 days. From the top to the bottom, it has always been, and it has been like this the last 3 times to the day exact, 364 days. Let's see if the same thing happens this cycle. I mentioned this a few videos back, and I keep mentioning it because it is very important to know. And this means if the history repeats, 364 days from the top, which was in October, will bring us to the bottom in approximately September, October of 2026. And I think this is one of the best predictors, if not the best predictor, of what Bitcoin will do in the future, because it has been accurate every single time. And I personally like to look at Bitcoin on the longer time frame. So I don't know what will happen to Bitcoin necessarily tomorrow or next week, but according to this chart and according to what's happened in the past, I'm fairly confident that Bitcoin will go down for another few months, because it has always done so. And another indicator that we can talk about is this. It is the Bitcoin spiral. If you want, you can follow this guy. It's called Root on Twitter. And it's pretty interesting to see. So what this also shows us is that we have always had, of course, the halving events happening in the same quadrant. And this is measured based on how many blocks of Bitcoin are being mined. But it is always happening around the same time. Of course, the halvings happen always approximately every 4 years. And then we can also see here the red dots, which is the bottom. So the bottoms always happen in the same quadrant. And then the all-time highs, they always happen in the same quadrant as well, apart from here. This is the first cycle for Bitcoin, the inception. And of course, we cannot count that. That is a bit different because Bitcoin is very volatile at the time. But looking at this, we can see that right now we are here and we're inching towards the time, the quadrant when Bitcoin is making a bottom. And according to the last chart, this should happen in September or October. So yeah, let's wait a bit, and I think this will play out again exactly as predicted as last time. So the next thing we're going to talk about is quickly Trump. Let me play the clip because he talked about crypto briefly.
Please do well. Crypto is a big industry. It's actually become somewhat mainstream. The banks have it, people have it, and I think as the leader of the country, we want to lead in AI. And we're leading China by a lot in AI, and we're also leading in crypto.
Yes, so of course Trump, he has his own coin, Trump coin. He recently, yesterday, had another another meeting with the top investors for Trump coin, and we know that the Trump family has made tremendous amounts. I've heard that they made over $1 billion from crypto on its own, and of course a lot of insider trading happening. But having a pro-crypto president in the US is very good for us, and just wanted to mention that as we go into Trump coin, which has actually dropped over 10% yesterday. And just before the meeting with the investors in his estate in Mar-a-Lago. So if we look, and this is just another example of a coin that is based on a person, Trump himself, based on hype. We can see it is actually down. If you go from the top to the bottom, it is down almost 95% from top to bottom. And even though you might think, okay, I already have so little in, if you add it up, you see yesterday it went down another like 10%, and it makes a difference. I mean, if you look 10, 11% yesterday, even if you have a small amount, it will just eventually go down. So you're better off just selling it than keep holding it. And that's hard to do, but I think that's what should be done. And like I said, I've learned my lesson with that. Buying in the bull market, seeing good wins, but then not selling on time. And what I've learned, like I said, just buy Bitcoin, leave everything else, leave the hype, ignore it, buy Bitcoin long term, and you'll do very good. Now, finally, let's go back into Bitcoin quickly. I've mentioned yesterday that we are looking like we might be bouncing from this support line here, which we've been bouncing off a few times. And it looks like right now we are bouncing to the upside. And like I said, the point that I think we could be going to is, first of all, the $81,000 range. Let me reload this page as it is not loading right now, but the $81,000, because that is the previous low. So one sec, as soon as it reloads, I can show you guys. So the $81,000 was here. You see the bottom right there? That was the previous low. So 81,000 here. And then of course I mentioned we have the CME gap, which is at about 84,000. Now the last thing I want to show you guys is that every single time on May 4th, Bitcoin has seen a massive drop. So if we go back in history here, and as my chart is loading, we can see, for example, last cycle, this is May 4th, and on the day, just a few days after, we dropped tremendously. So this was already in the bear market. And also the cycle before that, May 4th, you can see here, it was a local high, and then we started dropping. So if history repeats, we should be dropping again. We're in a bear market. We're coming close to that $81,000 previous low, filling the CME gap at $84,000. And I think we could be dropping here very, very soon as we continue the bear market, going into, of course, here 364 days from the peak to the bottom, bringing us to September or October of this year. That's it for today's video. If you liked it, leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.